explore emerging finance instruments for early stage innovators. If you'd like to access it, you can visit the Mobile for Development page under the resources website. We also facilitate partnerships and convene key stakeholders, and also offer technical advice to different entities that are looking to incorporate digital solutions to their innovative service models. And our most recent innovation fund round, which was on digital urban services with support from FCDO, covered the energy, plastic, waste management, sanitation, and water sectors. And we had 9 organizations that received a grant of between 100,000 to 250,000 pounds. And these enterprises also received technical assistance and dedicated partnership approach. To continue supporting innovation across cities, we are happy to present today a collaboration with our great partners, Connected Places Catapult and the UN Habitat, to design an initiative to grow innovative ecosystems in select intermediary cities. So intermediary cities are what we define as small and mid-sized cities across the continent, and we aim to address these challenges by driving collaboration between the public and the private sector and enabling the adoption of service delivery models. We hope to leverage and combine technology, innovative financing, and the agility of startups with the public sector's scale, service mandate, and resources. We will soon be publishing a report by the end of the year that outlines our multi-step approach. In the meantime, we look forward to engaging with city leaders, innovators, the civil society, and seek additional partners to scale up the intended impact of the initiative. And if you'd like to learn more about this, we have flyers around you that you can take a look. And just as I conclude, just to give you a flow of how the session is going to look like, today we'll be hearing from several stakeholders that are working to accelerate the adoption of smart cities across the continent. Following the keynote by the Ministry of ICT, we will have a fireside chat featuring them and UN Habitat that will be moderated by my colleague George Kibalabawa. We'll then move on to a panel discussion featuring Ampersand, which is a startup that works on e-mobility and charging stations across East Africa, and MTN Uganda, as well as Safaricom PLC. I'd now like to invite Ms. Alice Sigiro, who is a project director at the Ministry of ICT and is leading on the Smart City Hub. Our program is honored to support the Smart City Hub, which aims to position Rwanda and the city of Kigali at the forefront of urban innovation and smart city applications across the continent, while meeting its goal to better serve the residents. Thank you.
Good. What time is it now? Good. Is it afternoon, evening? Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Guys, presenting is already intimidating enough, so please give me some support with some energy. Thank you. Right. Thanks, Brian. My name is Alice Sigiro, as he mentioned. I'm the, the Director of Smart Cities at the Ministry of ICT and Innovation here in Rwanda. And I'm just going to quickly run through what the Smart City Hub here in Rwanda is about. So as a country, we have a smart cities blueprint or master plan that guides us, or I like to call it our Bible or handbook, as to how we turn and transform into a collection of smart cities and communities. And so the goal of this blueprint was really to improve the quality of life of citizens in the country through coordinated urban management or efficient urban management by using data, innovation, and technology. A few years ago, the blueprint was launched in 2017, and just the beginning of this year, we really wanted to do a self-assessment and really look at how relevant is this still, given that the ICT landscape is very dynamic and changes all the time, and to reflect also what's currently happening in the world with the focus on climate change. And so initially our blueprint was focused on digital transformation, but I think as you are all aware, now we're talking about also the green transition or green transformation, and so that has led us to becoming now talking about the twin transition, so green and digital transformation. And just to go back, so all this focuses on the different aspects of urbanization, and so you have citizen engagement, transport, and utility and other utilities. And so we did a self-assessment, as I mentioned, because we were looking at, we launched the blueprint in 2017, but are we moving at the pace that we desired? Are we actually achieving impact? Are we actually doing what we set out to do 5 years ago or 6 years ago? And so with that, we went into the sector and spoke to the ecosystem and asked them a few questions. And what came up was that some people had no idea who leads smart cities. And I was like, we've been doing this for how many years now, and you think there's no one doing it? But then that was self-criticism to us that said, okay, we need to do more action. We need to have more action towards creating awareness. And then also, the mandate is there, or the master plan is there, but there's no dedicated financing that goes to that, so that also hinders progress in its own ways. And then also we realized that just the efficiency that we could have achieved is not really being optimized because of siloed efforts and just that fragmentation of governance that you were talking about. And so we then asked ourselves, what would our theory of change be if we create this thing that we call a smart city hub? Why is the hub there? And so a theory of change says, if smart city challenges are clearly defined, then innovators include so many people, so that's entrepreneurs, SMEs, NGOs, and if we clearly define the challenges for them, then they're more likely to solve them. And the second part was, if smart city knowledge is easily available, readily available, then more innovators will develop outstanding, or what I like to call targeted solutions. And the last bit of that was, if smart city innovators, again, in brackets, you know who those are, if they are matched, am I moving too fast? All right, I'm timed, so I'm trying to rush through. If smart city innovators are matched with the right customers, the right data, and the right financing or investors, and the pilot zones where to try and test their products, then they're more likely to solve challenges faster and better. And so as we talked about creating the hub, we then said, everyone throws around the word ecosystem, but what does ecosystem mean for us as smart cities and as the smart city hub? And so then we came down to these 6 groups. Some are interchangeable or are parallel, but also distinct in their own different ways. So we have the citizens, who is our most important stakeholder, and these we engage through existing channels by our Ministry of Local Government. The Ministry of Local Government already has channels like Tuesday evenings where parents meet in communities to discuss challenges of children, students, the community as a whole. We have what we call Umuganda, which I would encourage you to participate in if you're ever here at the end of the month, and that's a monthly cleaning or community cleaning program. And then, so we have those channels that we can engage the citizens through and engage them to do what? To pull or to collect what those challenges, society challenges, socioeconomic challenges are. And then we have the public sector who has the mandate to solve these challenges. We have the development partners who usually have financing and programs and capacity building initiatives towards certain challenges. So really, how do we connect these 3? But also on the other side, okay, now I'm too far. So we have innovators at the top, so matching these innovators to actual and real challenges. And then we have the private sector enablers, some of these are ESOs and many others, and then also financiers. So this is who we identified as our ecosystem. And then additional to that, some of the questions people were asking us were, what are you doing different from, are you another innovation hub? We have over 41 accelerators and innovation hubs in the country. And so when we were being asked this, we said, no, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to repeat what everyone else is doing. Rather, we are building on the assets and the infrastructure and the different services that they are already offering and just pulling them together as one umbrella stop center, if I can call it that, to make it easier for a startup, to make it easier for a government person, to make it easier for a financier or investor that's looking to enter into the smart cities space. So, with that, we had to come up with a few customers. So who were our clients? We said we have 4 particular groups. One, we have the innovation community, and that's the startups and the innovators. And so one that's represented by a few, we took on a few personas that would help us to really get to the details of what their needs would be. And so persona A, representing the innovation community, is Bob, who is a founder of an e-mobility startup who came to an event like this. liked Rwanda, was like, oh, the policy is enabling, I'll move right into Rwanda. But then he got here and he's stuck. He doesn't know how to connect with other innovators. He doesn't know how to actually identify challenges that he can address and really fit within the ecosystem. So we had that guy. And then we had Jean-Marie Vianney, who is an owner of a West management SME, but he does business as usual, regular thing. His only concern is, I collect the waste, I dump it where it's supposed to be dumped, I pay my staff. So we help people like this to think innovatively, to digitize their companies, to digitize their services and products. And then group 3 is Jeanne, who is a new mayor of a secondary city in Rwanda. Being new to being a mayor, I think if you've not met a mayor, these guys have so much work to do. They have a lot of stress and a lot of things to deliver. Service delivery, as we talk about it, is their #1 mandate. So she is overwhelmed with so many challenges in her city, but does not have enough financing to respond to I think, as you may know, government never has enough financing to respond to all the existing challenges. Group 4 is the investors. Now, these guys represented by Marie. Marie is a managing director of a VC. She's just moved back from the diaspora. She's wanting to invest in the country, but doesn't know how to find or where to find the right innovators and so on. So we wanted to really say, how do we serve all these 4 guys in one place? And so with that, I'm being told that I have 1 minute left. With that, we came down to 3 major outcomes. One was, how do we develop or create a demand-driven agenda? 2, how do we become the source of research, knowledge, and connections? 3, how do we solve smart city challenges, leveraging the right actors efficiently and with pace? Again, if you remember our theory of change and challenges, this is what informed this. And so in year 1, we really identified 8 priority services for ourselves. So 1 would be to work with mayors on something called the Smart City Maturity Index, which we're going to help them to self-assess and see how they are doing and set goals for themselves. 2 is to also do a program called Smart City Connect that I'll talk about later. And so from that, we actually identify challenges that are real and we connect with citizens. So then we have a demand-driven agenda rather than innovators just coming up with a super cool solution that worked in Asia and thinks it's going to work here, but it doesn't. Then 2 was really creating a knowledge management platform, but also to be producers of knowledge and research. 3 is to then connects all these actors. If we've clearly identified the challenges, we have the knowledge, the skills to solve these problems, then we identify, then we are able to produce more targeted solutions. We even identify piloting areas. Our strategy here is to first is to use a strategy of piloting, and then whatever works and succeeds is scaled up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for lending me your attention.
Thank you, Alice, for this great perspective on how Kigali is making smart cities a reality. And I'm really happy that you're going to stay on stage so we can hear more from you about your work here in Rwanda and what other countries can learn from it as well. For this next component of our session, I'd like to hear from the perspectives from government and enabling organizations on how innovative use cases across cities can be scaled and how there can be an enabling environment for these use cases from a public policy perspective, and also ensuring that smart city approaches really are people-centered and sustainable. So we have Alice here already, and I'd also like to welcome on stage Isabel Wetze, who is a program management officer at UN Habitat. She brings with her over a decade of experience of working on sustainable urban development issues with a number of different organizations. She has a keen interest in how to bridge public policy and innovation to drive better urban governance, urban planning, and urban management. And I'm really excited for our conversation now. Isabel. Let me see if I got the mic to work. Check, check. Yes, seems to work. Isabel, we've just heard a bit about Alice's work specifically in Rwanda, but I'd love to learn more about what UN Habitat is doing, working with governments across the region in terms of really setting enabling environment and public policies that can enable innovations and smart city approaches to thrive. Could you tell us a bit more about sort of the international perspective and how UN Habitat engages there?
Sure. Thank you very much, George. Great to be on the panel with you. And yes, so UN Habitat is the cities organization of the United Nations. And one of the big things that we're currently working on, which has just been approved at all of the UN member states level. So that means 193 member states have jointly agreed to come up with an universally agreed definition of smart cities, and that's actually quite the milestone. But that milestone also comes with a consultative process among those 193 member states that can take a little while. So we're looking at about a 1-year timeline to develop international guidelines on people-centered smart cities. Why people-centered? Because no smart city can work without people. So whatever kind of technologies are being developed that are serving cities and citizens' needs have to be embedded in the needs of residents and citizens. So that for us is one of the big themes that we're working on as UN Habitat, and we're engaging, of course, different stakeholders in this process, countries, but then also listening to experts, engaging them in other related processes, for instance, also working on a global outlook on smart cities that we are going to publish in the process as well. So that is one thing that I think at the international level we are creating, and that will have relevance to national governments, local governments, and then of course also people. Another way we are operating is also, we have just recently launched a global alliance of mayors on digital cooperation. So we recognize that there is a need for platforms for knowledge exchange, sharing lessons, and really engaging in understanding what can work, what works best, for which reasons, etc. And so I'm also happy to hear Alice talking about the platform, the necessity of a platform at a national or even city level, because there is so much that cities can learn from each other before they look elsewhere. And then at the national and local government level, what UN Habitat does is we also provide policy and technical advice to local and national governments based on need. So now a lot of cities will come to us as the UN body in charge of cities, requesting for, we need smart city guidelines, we need digital governance strategies. And so there's a growing need of cities to better understand how to adopt technologies, how to use technologies, but also how to understand maybe risks associated with them and be better prepared for a digital future. And so that's also something where, as UN Habitat, we are trying to provide that kind of support to cities, but it can also be a very different kind of support. So for instance, using different types of innovative tools, to advise cities, to help them in coming up with different types of solutions to their city challenges that they have.
Thanks for that. So yeah, great to hear about both these sort of international initiatives that are aiming to work with national governments, but also the kind of promotion of city-to-city learning and also the importance of capacity building on smart city approaches, because you're right, obviously we're very excited about the opportunities, but it's also important to understand the business model and risks associated with some of these approaches as well. Next question is for both of you. In the introduction from Brian, we heard a bit about some of the challenges that African cities are confronted with. Rapid urbanization, a lot of cities across the continent, but also in Rwanda, are growing very fast, widening service gaps, climate change, access to financing. How do you see smart city approaches and urban innovation come in when it comes to addressing those challenges, and how do you conceptualize, urban innovation in the context of those kind of challenges? Maybe I can pick on you first, Alice.
Thank you, George. And thank you, Isabel, for that. I remembered that the master plan that we built or developed in Rwanda was actually through a partnership with UN Habitat, so they walk the talk. So to respond to your question, the urbanization challenges or the challenges that increased urbanization presents as so many. Can you hear me okay? Yes, there are so many in different ways that already as cities are, the resources or the infrastructure and the assets of cities are already strained. If I can give an example of here in Kigali, currently our population stands at 1.7 million and we are projected to grow to 3.8 million in the next 5 years. And if you ask Kigalians, they will tell you that the traffic has been increasing already. It's already a nightmare. And so you think of the city is not growing or expanding, the roads are not necessarily growing, expanding, but we still have to use those. And with an increased population means increased number of vehicles on the road. And so what do we do with such things? And so really one of the approaches or the ways that we are using urban innovation is to work with the private sector to say, as one of the things I talked about in the Smart City Hub, what we'll be doing is creating co-creation platforms where, as a government, we don't have all the brilliant ideas, we don't necessarily have all the funding, we don't have all the technology know-how, but we open up to collaboration and to new ways of doing things. And a very good example of that is that a few years ago, when I think some of you in the room might be very familiar with Zipline. So a few years ago, when there was no policy around the use of drones, Rwanda opened up to Zipline to come and test their drones. So they couldn't do that in the US where they were originally from because there was no policy anywhere really. And so what we did is we opened up to them and adopted something we call a performance-based contract or policy, where we said, okay, we don't understand drones fully yet. We don't really know this technology fully, but we're willing to work with you to test it, and whatever works, we note it down, we document everything, and that informs the policy then later on. And so if you've seen, this country is called the land of 1,000 hills. It's very hilly terrain, so to even reach remote areas here was very difficult. So doing sort of like blood transfers or sending medical or pharmaceutical products to remote areas was a nightmare, where it would take 4 days. Now we use the Zipline drones, and it takes under 45 minutes to deliver that, somewhere that could have taken 4 hours. And so really these are the kinds of approaches of where we're opening up to say, okay, we don't know everything that there is to know, and technology changes every day, every night, every hour. And so with the performance-based approach, then we're able to open ourselves up for more opportunity and more new ways of doing things, as you know, innovation is about. So I think that's what I can share.
Thanks, Alice. That's great to hear, and I think being sort of agile from a regulatory approach and taking bets on new innovations is really important. And I think Rwanda is a pioneer, not just on drone regulation, but also when we look at e-mobility, you know, a pioneer when it comes to setting an enabling environment. In that regard, just one follow-up question for you, Alice. Obviously, you represent the Ministry of ICT, and it's obvious that people working for the Ministry of ICT are excited about technology, but for innovations in cities to really scale, you need other government actors to also come on board and support innovation and technology adoption. So how do you work with your colleagues across other ministries, across other local government bodies, to make sure that your vision and your excitement about technology and innovation is shared as a whole government?
Great, thank you, George. So, like you rightfully said, a few years ago when we were testing, I remember we did a pilot project in waste management, where we wanted to introduce, I know some stakeholders in the sector in the room, we wanted to test technology in waste management. At the onset, everyone was like, ICT, what the heck are you doing in waste management? So they kicked us out. So, but then we had to re-strategize and talk, and we figured that the best way to really communicate the importance of this to people, to the different institutions, was to approach it from a place of their pain points. So we then talked to them about, these are your pain points as you do your work in your mandate, and this is how technology can enable whatever you're doing, and this is how data and innovation can enable what you're doing. So if we use these sensors, you're able to collect information and analytics or trends on the waste management sector, and that will inform your policy making, that will inform how you go and request for more funding, because you have real data, real facts that can be used to then request for that. And then the second thing was also we have something that we call the sector strategic plan, ICT sector strategic plan, that's contextualized for each sector. So agriculture has their own, infrastructure has their own, and many others. But what we realized was a few years ago was that this was there, but each of those sectors, at the most, what they had was an IT officer, and this guy's job was to troubleshoot your computer when it doesn't work, or the print and kick it twice, and then it is up and running again. And so really these guys were not responsible for thinking strategically for the sector. And so what the government did, or the Ministry of ICT did, is we created what we call a CDO structure, and this is a Chief Digital Officer, that are residing within all these different sectors, and their job is to now think strategically, because these have a tech background but also mixed with a sector background. And so these guys now, it's not even a person, it's actually an office with about 12 people that has a business analyst, it has a planner, it has a technology expert, and so on. So in collaboration with these guys, we sit at the Ministry of ICT, but we have ambassadors in all the sectors who are sitting on management, and they're able to make decisions. And when they're doing the budget planning, they feature in smart city related or city related aspects or initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's great to hear, and great to hear about some of the institutional innovations that you've undertaken in order to make sure that it goes far beyond just kicking a computer, but actually looking strategically at the opportunities of innovation in each sector. Isabel, just wondering on this question of challenges and how urban innovation fits in, what your perspective is. Yeah.
Sure, thank you. Well, I can kind of rewind a little bit. I think we have a lot of data and figures that show very clearly that urbanization is going to happen, whether we like it or not. And this is probably all across the world, but more significantly in lower and middle income countries. And so that being said, the challenges that are related to that need to be addressed now before the growth is just exponential and really much harder to manage. And so some of the things that we advocate for as UN Habitat is sometimes very basic planning principles. So for instance, how do you manage a city's density? That's a basic thing that can be managed with good urban planning mechanisms in place, etc. Because if you don't do it, then you'll struggle with needing a lot of land to cover people, infrastructure, services, etc. And often that is at the detriment of other things like the environment and so on. And so that issue around managing density and preventing sprawl is very important. The other one is enhancing planning capacities of cities. So we are looking at sometimes a doubling of cities in a very short period of time, sometimes 5, 10, or 50 years or so. That means a lot of the cities that are currently there, local governments that are currently there, don't even have the capacity to deal with that kind of growth, simply because of the way the cities are currently set up. And so for that, we need to find ways for the cities to expand in a sustainable way. So for instance, going up and not sprawling outwards, etc. And then also finding ways of building that capacity, putting trainings in place, and making sure that there's a kind of continuous training of the officials of the cities to manage that. And then another aspect, which is sometimes forgotten, but also in the context of tech quite important, is that all tiers of government have to take into account that cities' residents are becoming older. So how do we actually now deal with our cities as we're also digitizing more of our services and becoming smarter and so on, as our populations are getting older, and maybe not all of them are digitally literate, for instance. So that's something that needs to be taken into account to create a good quality of life for all. And then lastly, and I did just mention that at the beginning, urbanization is inevitable. Therefore, planning for urban growth is critical for our sustainable future. And now on that point of sustainability, you also just mentioned there's a lot of climate change impacts that will be felt, especially with the growing cities, growing need for space, better services, and so on. And often that impact will be felt in cities the most. I mean, we see increasing numbers of disasters that are happening, often affecting same cities that are already in ecological hotspots of, for instance, experiencing floodings, experiencing tsunamis, etc. And so these cities, on top of now having to deal with the climate impact challenges or climate change impact challenges, they also have to deal with growing populations. And so that is multiple challenges at once. And again, it comes back to the point of how do these cities best prepare for sustainable futures. And I think the use of technology and innovative solutions is key in that, because you can only preach capacity building tools and adequate territorial planning issues. But the point is technologies are rapidly evolving and rapidly influencing or impacting us. And we should use them, local governments should use them, national governments should use them to the benefit of creating smarter and more sustainable cities.
Just to follow up from that, you mentioned some of those concurrent challenges again, and obviously that raises a lot of financing questions as well. So we at the GSMA and the Digital Utilities Program specifically are always interested in the role of technology adoption and data-driven planning and what that can mean for better financing opportunities down the line. Do you and Habitat have any perspective on that, as to not just present innovation and data-driven approaches to urban policymakers as a tech solution, but also as an opportunity to, in the longer term, attract necessary funding for sustainable urban development?
All right, that is probably one of the biggest challenges, and I don't think I have all of the answers to that, but it's a very important question to address. So I think the traditional donors, let's say many of the government donors that are supporting development projects around the world, will have to look more closely into what kind of projects and programs they will want to fund going forward with the rapid changes of happening all around the world. So I think that is one. But there's also a lot of non-traditional donors that are willing to put in money to build and improve services, service delivery in cities, to work, to collaborate with a wide set of different stakeholders, including public and private sectors, academia, others. And so I think we need to look more into non-traditional donors, and these could be foundations, these could be different kinds of private sector partners that now have developed a more keen interest in putting in place the right kind of structures where also their companies and businesses can thrive. And I think more and more of the donors have started recognizing that now, for instance, in the context of building smarter or more sustainable cities, that is also benefiting them. And so I think that's where probably more of the development funding can be unlocked. But I think at the bottom of it all is the point on partnerships. You need to think of partnerships a little bit more outside of the box of how traditional partnerships look. So I just mentioned multi-sector partnerships, stakeholder partnerships is really the way to go, also when it comes to approaching donor funding, but then also from the donor's perspective to look at how can we see the bigger connected issues rather than only looking at what one particular technology can contribute also.
Yeah, following up on that, Alice, I saw I really like the personas that you had there. I think they really help materialize, the kind of stakeholders you want to engage with as part of your smart city vision. But one of the personas was a venture capital investor that came from the diaspora and wanted to relocate in Rwanda. So how does, making Rwanda a sort of hub for VC investment and investors in general fit in within the broader kind of smart city strategy as well?
Thank you. I think it comes back to the financing aspect that we were talking about. And even as a country, we talk about, wanting to establish ourselves as a proof of concept hub or an innovation hub, but we can't do that if investors cannot find themselves within our ecosystem, or if they come and then there is no policy that enables them, they come and then they cannot find investable startups, which is one of the biggest challenges that the Smart City Hub wants to solve. And so I'm vying off now, I'm forgetting.
We were in the Smart City Hub and investors.
Yes, yes. So the VCs, some of the VCs that we've talked to, one of the challenges they mentioned was finding those investable startups. And so what we asked them was, then what would you want to see? if you come. And so then they said, we want more than just a nice and fancy product or a nice and fancy solution. We want to see the impact that it's creating, and we want to see that it's aligned to the government priorities. And so we said, okay, actually at the hub, what we're doing is we are creating an inventory of challenges from the society through the Smart City Connect, which is the platform through which we'll be connecting with citizens and working with them to source what those challenges are, and then we map them in order of priority, also not nationally necessarily, but city level, because we tend to think that all cities have same challenges because it's the same country, but it's far from the truth. We found out that whatever some solutions we've piloted and tested in Kigali have worked fantastic, and we assume it's going to work in the rural areas, and then we get there and then there's no demand even for that. And so that's why we are focusing on working on city level. So the program that we have is on a mayoral level. So then beyond working with the mayors to identify these challenges, then we publish them, we make them available to everyone, and then we work with the innovation ecosystem as well to tell them, okay, mayor, you have this solution, mayor B or C has this challenge, and this works perfectly, but GIZ, for example, has a program within that, and this is how the three of you can come and work together and even improve the value creation or the value proposition from this product. And so then in that instance, when an investor comes, he finds that there's already some level of networking that's already happened, that all these priorities are connected, and they're solving real challenges, and they're making real impact. And of course, as VCs, they're interested in making money and making profit. But if you can't just focus on the making profit without impact. And so these are the things that we've seen that they are interested in, and we're happy to serve through the hub.
Really interesting. Thanks a lot. And it's also a nice segue to my next question to Isabel, because you mentioned that not every city is created equal, and some of them have very different challenges. So Isabel, I know for you in Habitat also a key focus is intermediary cities. And we often think about the big cities on the continent, Kinshasa, Lagos, Cairo, but there's so many intermediary cities across African countries that are actually accounting for the bulk of urban growth on the continent. So can you tell us a bit about why focusing on intermediate cities is so key from an urban development perspective, and what kind of opportunities you see there?
Thanks, George. Yes, so you have already heard intermediary cities are the fastest growing group of cities currently as it stands. So that is something that will change the way that now, for instance, the continent looks. We might now see these huge metropolises, but soon there will be many other cities, some of those that you have never even heard of, that will suddenly be over 1 million inhabitants, and people will wonder, oh, where did they suddenly come from? Because that growth happens so fast. And so maybe just to put that in context, so populations of cities in lower income countries are projected to grow by nearly 2.5 times in the next 40 or so years. So that is quite a lot. And on top of that, and I just mentioned that earlier as well, urban sprawl might actually become a low-income country phenomenon. Right now, it is something that we're thinking about when thinking of the US and countries like that. But that is going to change. And actually, so when you look at the growth of the city land area, currently the continents that are most going to be affected by that is the African continent, or sub-Saharan Africa in particular, and Oceania as well. So those two continents are estimated to almost double in terms of growth of the city land size. And so that's quite significant because that's a big challenge now that we have when we are sprawling into areas that are maybe currently used for agricultural production, maybe also for ecosystem recovery purposes. We need the forests around the cities, etc. So that is going to be a big challenge for the cities to manage. But also, so in the context of that, we realize that smaller cities and towns are critical to achieving sustainable urban futures, especially because we are still at a point where we can shift gears and develop a lot of the sustainable and innovative solutions to that kind of growth that is going to happen in the next 50 or so years. And so that brings me now also to introducing to you a partnership that we have established with the GSMA and also Connected Places Catapult. You have the flyers on the chairs. I encourage you to have a look at those. where we are looking particularly at intermediary cities, and we want to create an impact by particularly looking at what kind of innovative solutions can we develop together with different partners, together with the city government and innovators, that can solve some of the challenges that these cities experience right now, also taking into consideration the big changes that they're going to experience in the next couple of decades. And so that program that we have designed is based on a challenge-driven innovation model. And we think that that is one of the very effective ways of solving some of the urban challenges, because like we heard earlier also from Alice, local governments can't always do it alone. Probably in most instances, they cannot do it alone. They need help, they need support. And so why not tap into the resources of the private sector in a sustainable way where you bring the private sector into solving public sector challenges. So you look at one particular challenge. That could be a challenge of service delivery, of utilities, for instance, electricity, water, all sorts of different challenges that a city might experience. And you're saying, let's try and see what innovator X or startup so-and-so can bring on the table. These can be digital solutions, they can be non-digital solutions. And what we will want to achieve with that program is bring together these different solutions, have them work out how that can actually work in the city context, in the public sector context, in the institutional context also. And then that solution can be adopted and scaled. And so with that kind of testing period and also that scaling of the impact and growing that solution from maybe an idea to an actual reality that can work in a city context, we believe that that's a good way, or like a segue to now incorporating private sector into a city context, engaging them in the process, engaging citizens in the process, because you have to find out what do people really need when it comes to solving particular challenges. Yeah.
Thanks, Isabel. I have to pause you there just because I want to hear a bit from the audience real quick before I have to let you go. I could keep the conversation going for hours, but I wanted to check if there are two questions from the audience for our great panelists. We'll take them both at once and then we can answer them at once. So I want to check if there are any questions. Yeah, I think we have one here and another one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And please keep the questions brief if possible. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you. If in case you didn't get it, the question was, how do you work with innovators specifically? Do you have a specific way of engaging them? Just quickly checking if there's another question that we can pick up. I think one over there, and then we can answer them both at once. Yeah.
Thank you. My question goes to Aris. You have been saying that you have a database or...
Sorry, can you speak up a bit? Sorry.
Thank you. My question goes to Aris. You have been saying that there is a platform where we can find, as innovators, we can find the problems faced by cities at the city level. My question is this: is there any platform or a framework where you post those problems, those city level problems, so that as innovators we can access them? That's my question.
Thanks. If I can ask both of you to keep the answers not too long as well, so we can move to the next part. Thank you.
I can start very quickly. So thanks for that question. One example of working with innovators is where once you identify a kind of challenge that you want to see solved by working with startups, companies, consortia, etc., is we let them partner up. We have a kind of matchmaking phase where we see that the solution that is coming up at the end of that process is not just one solution provided by one startup, but essentially is then developed collaboratively with a team that has different components to that solution. And I think why that is important is also because you encourage collaboration, you encourage thinking across the board outside of your own box of what one solution could look like, and you're thinking of a city ecosystem. And so solutions are usually always more complex than that. So that's one example of how we as the UN can work with innovators.
And as government here in Rwanda, or as the Smart City Hub, which is actually a consortium of 3 partners, that's the Ministry of ICT, and RISA, which is our implementation agency, and then the third partner is the ICT Chamber, or the Private Sector Federation here, who now comes on board as a representative of the private sector or the innovation ecosystem. So that's a very formal way through which we engage with them. Whatever we are designing, these guys, the voice is represented, but we also have communities of practice that we engage them through. We have networking sessions that will be happening on a monthly basis. I invite you to visit Noshken Foundation that's in town. But now to answer the second question. So the Smart City Hub actually just launched less than 4 weeks ago. And as I mentioned on the slides, we are just at the start, and we are giving ourselves year 1 to build this knowledge management platform. And one of the things we are starting with is even identifying who are the actual companies or innovators that qualify as smart city companies, and then we'll create a directory of who those are, profiles, contacts, whatever, and that will be on the website. So the Smart City Hub website that will be launched very soon as well. I'm happy to engage with you so I don't steal into your time, but we can talk after this.
Thanks a lot. And it's also, the questions were a perfect segue into the next section of our session, which will focus a bit more on private sector organizations. Isabel, Alice, thanks so much for sharing your insights. I encourage everyone, if you have questions about the work of UN Habitat or Rwanda Smart City Hub, please get in touch with them and chat with them after the session. Thank you again for your contributions. So now I'll go rapid fire in terms of introductions for the next section of this event, which is kind of hearing a bit more from mobile operators and private sector innovators on how the private sector can contribute to smart city approaches. And first I'd like to call on Jerry Tecker, who leads Safaricom's IoT business. Jerry, please join us on stage. Thank you. Then we have Beatrice Mawemuko, who's a commercial and strategy manager at MTN Uganda. Beatrice, thank you for joining us. And then lastly, Al Tilaf, who's the co-founder and CTO at Ampersand. I didn't give introductions because of the mobile operators because we're at a GSMA event. I think everyone knows these. But Ampersand is a big e-mobility provider with operations across East Africa. I really want to talk a bit about, the specific digital solutions that make, smart cities a reality, but also look at to what extent, rapid urbanization in Africa is actually a huge commercial opportunity, both for mobile operators and for startups. So Jerry, I'll start with you. IoT ecosystems across low and middle income countries, but especially in Africa as well, have been growing quite a bit, and Safaricom has been making IoT a key priority in their business strategy. Can you tell us a bit about some of the use cases that you're working on within Safaricom's IoT business, and why you're particularly excited about those from a sort of urban innovation and development perspective, and what kind of some of the commercial and social returns from those projects are?
Thanks, George, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, as a telco, we are in the journey of transitioning to a tech company, and IoT becomes one of those business lines that we've chosen to focus on. So, we looked at Kenya in totality and the issues that we have from an urbanization perspective, and we decided to focus on utilities for a start. As we begin this journey and grow. And so when you look at where we are as a nation, from a water provision perspective, we have challenges in access of water. We have the utilities today lose a lot of money in terms of revenue losses, in terms of money that services they've rendered but they can't collect. In Kenya, it currently stands at around 11 billion per annum. The power utility, we have one, loses around 12% from commercial losses. 1 percentage point is around 1.5 billion Kenya shillings. So when we looked at that at that scenario, then we said let's put in our resources into the utility space to do two critical things. One, improve operational efficiency around how they manage themselves, work with them to be able now to get back that revenue that they lose today, and then increase access to either water from a water perspective and access to electricity from an electricity perspective.
Thanks for that. So really interesting to hear how, IoT solutions can both, increase operational efficiency and expand access, which is a huge challenge for utilities, not just in Kenya, but across the continent. Looking forward to learning more about your work on that. Beatrice, next question is for you. Obviously, digital payments have already transformed urban economic activity across African countries, and MTN is at the forefront of driving that change. What role do you see, partnerships with urban service providers playing in MTN's mobile money business, and what are some examples of some of the partnerships you have and their benefits?
Okay, thank you, George, and I'm happy to be here. So right now, when you look at the mobile money industry in Uganda, the last report from the BOU, the central bank, that he said that we are doing around 16 million transactions a day, and we have around 40 million active customers as an industry. And for us to be able to command that, we have 4 pillars that we are working with, and this is trust, collaboration, digital distribution, but also innovation. And that is really driven by the different partners that we work with. So the partnerships are really, really important. One of the example that I can give you is recently, be it in COVID, we did disbursements for the COVID relief through the MTN platform for the government. But also we've been able to do a parish development model disbursements for the government to the final person at the bottom of the pyramid. Through collaborations, we've been able to understand and revisit our solutions. For example, we've done some key collaborations with NGOs where they have taken us to the field, to the refugee camps, and we've seen the people that they serve, and then we were able to go back in the office and transform and come up with more human-centered designs that speak to their specific needs, but also to understand their main pain points, and then we are able to solution for them. So we work with different partners in such a way, be it government, be it private, be it startups, to enable us improve on our solutions, but also to help them efficiently serve the customers for the government or collect for other businesses through our services. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now turning to you. Given that you're a representative of a startup, I do want to give you the opportunity to give us a brief pitch of what Ampersand does and what solution you offer. And also if you can give us a bit of a perspective on how, two-wheelers fit within the kind of smart city offering in African cities, because some people might not necessarily associate two-wheelers with smart cities.
Thanks, George. Yeah, you can call me also Bob. I'm the guy number 1 in the Alice's slides, the e-mobility entrepreneur, I guess. Yeah, when we came to Rwanda in 2016, we really came with the idea that electric two-wheelers are not just for the rich countries. They're actually very applicable to places where the cost of fuel is very high and the grids are green. So what Ampersand e-mobility, we basically have a fully digital solution to provide green transport for electric motorcycles. So we have a motorcycle product that we provide at a similar cost to an internal combustion equivalent. We have a battery swap technology that we deploy in our swap stations across the city. There's around 20 in Kigali and the peri-urban area. And then we allow customers to go electrics doing taxi motor service and or other sorts of services and save money from day one. So it becomes really basic and easy for them to go electric and actually save close to 50% in comparison to using a internal combustion engine equivalent. And motorcycles are really, they're a backbone of urban transport in most African cities. They provide public transport, they provide goods transport. They really enable a lot of economic activity, and these are generally commercial vehicles. They're not generally for personal mobility. They're very much used for revenue-generating activities. At Ampersand, our solution is actually a very, let's say, smart solution in the respect that it is IoT driven. All the batteries are actually, it's a massive sensor network that's deployed across the urban area. We're collecting over 50 million data points every 5 seconds from all these batteries that are flowing in the network. We get to see all sorts of information through that in real time. And all the transactions that we do are actually cashless. So every time a driver is making a swap, we're doing right now a swap every 5 seconds. So that's a swap just happened. Yeah. So so every time that happens, there's a mobile money transaction. We know how much the user has spent on that energy that they use in that vehicle. We know who that driver is, who that user is, and we know exactly how much they need to pay. And that transaction just happens all within 2 minutes time span. And the driver goes along their way, and they get to get this fantastic service and customer experience through largely a digital product, but it's actually a real world digital product. So if you go out in the streets in Kigali today, you'll see around 1 in every 20 of the motorcycles you'll see will be an Ampersand vehicle. And we believe that the two-wheelers actually has a very bright future in urban areas. We've seen this transformation happen in Asia, and we hope to see the same transformation happen in African cities as well. We also operated in Nairobi, Kenya, where we partnered closely with Safaricom, thankfully. And the amount of efficiencies that two-wheelers provide compared to four-wheelers is actually vast. Just for comparison, to carry a single person around on a specific amount of area with a two-wheeler compared to a four-wheeler, and the amount of energy needed is around 4 times less, right? And that scales up in that respect as well. So as they get adopted into the smart cities and allow the two-wheeler to become part of that smart city future is going to be very important to allow to move people efficiently and economically in the future.
Yeah, one cannot overstate how critical two-wheelers are to urban transport across a lot of different African cities. So it's great to hear the work that you're doing to make that more sustainable and more efficient, and also fascinating to hear in terms of like how data-driven you already are and how many data points you capture within your operation. My next question is going to be a bit more complex, because we in the utilities team, we work across sectors like energy, Jerry mentioned water, transport, waste management. So sectors that, while they can benefit from private sector engagement and startup innovation, also require government engagement. Question to all of you, in terms of working with government stakeholders on different projects, from smart metering, deploying charging infrastructure, digitizing payments, what have been some of your lessons in terms of working with the public sector successfully on smart city approaches, and what kind of lessons can you share on that? You're also free to share some of the challenges you've encountered, of course.
So government is a very key stakeholder if these technologies are to succeed and work. And so some of the things that we've seen from our experience is, for these projects to succeed, then how government views this project, then needs to change. Majority of these are viewed as IT or technology projects. And so it's in the, as the lady said, it is domiciled within the ICT ministry, or if it's a utility within the ICT department. But really, it has to shift from an ICT project to a business transformation project. So government must start looking at this project as business transformation projects as opposed to technology projects. And where we've seen that happen, there has been ownership from the leader of those organizations. And that is where success has come. Where that has not happened, we've struggled in terms of buying in of the projects and even delivery of those projects. And then that's most critical. The second thing is capacity building. These are new things, even for us who are in technology. We continue to learn. So it's important also for the government to start investing in capacity building, both for its people and in general. We must start appreciating what does smart technology is, what does it do, and from a business perspective then, what outcomes can it deliver for us as a government.
Right. No, it's really interesting to hear some of the parallels between your points and the previous discussion on the importance of not just seeing digitalization as a one-off kind of IT project, but actually a business transformation project, and then also the point about the importance of capacity building within government. Really interesting. Just wanted to see if there are any other perspectives on government engagement from either Alp or Beatrice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. The previous speakers have said, the government is a very key stakeholder if we are to, transform our cities. But at MTN, we do not refer to challenges as challenges. We see them as opportunities to be able to collaborate and work with government. So one of the opportunities that we've seen, as we know, most of our governments have legacy infrastructures. Their technology is for, I think, 1900, for lack of a better example. So the way we've managed that, so integrating with their platforms becomes really hard. And the way we've managed that is by, using our in-house technology teams to handhold them, to make sure that, the integration is, made possible, but also to introduce the government to third-party aggregators that they might use. Of course, that has two other side of it. It might affect the costing of the service at the end of the day, but that is one of the way that we are handling that. The other thing, we've done a lot of stakeholder management. We've done a lot of digital literacy. We fund some of these organizations that, are trying to educate, be it the government and the private sector, on, the beauty of digital transformation generally, to see that they can, adopt, but also be able to push down through the government to use some of these systems. The other things that we've done, because as you know, governments, everybody here was mentioning that cost, funding. So we've done a lot of work where the services that we create or innovate, or solutions that are tailored for the government, we make sure that we price them differently or favorably. One, for the customer paying into the government wallet, but also for the government that is collecting, because it's saving costs, but it's also collecting efficiently. And because of that, in Uganda, we've been able to, collect taxes, police permits, and, national water, etc. So that's how we are trying to work with government to try and solve some of its challenges by flipping them the other way around as opportunities that we can co-create and innovate with them. Thank you.
Absolutely, and great to hear about some of the examples on digitizing person-to-government payments, but also government-to-person payments. We in the digital utilities team have done a lot of research that shows, how important that is also for government service providers, especially utilities, to work more effectively. I saw you wanted to come in on that government engagement question.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the small player in the room here. We're not Safaricom or MTN, but a relatively small startup. But I think the Rwandan government has been extremely open to creating new policies and working with even people like us that are quite small in that respect, to kind of craft policy to make sure that there is an environment where the innovation can happen. And I think they see the benefit of that. I think, balancing regulation with deregulation, it's always a tough line to draw there on how much do you deregulate, how much do you regulate. But it's really important to keep a strong balance in there. And for example, in Kenya, the government is taking a little bit of a different approach with respect to that, trying to do much broader regulation with respect to what the market should look like. So it really requires a lot of it takes time working with governments, but it's generally very, as long as it's a dialogue, that's very important. And we've seen that most of the time it is a dialogue, and that's really helpful for us to be in the room with them and help them see the benefits and draw the distinctions between when to regulate, when to give incentives, and when to remove those incentives, as it can really make the difference between having a thriving ecosystem and a very dwindling ecosystem.
Right. Well, that's an important message for startups out there, I think, especially working in these kinds of spaces like utility service delivery, transport, be in the room, right? Like be able to shape and influence some of the thinking around regulation, although obviously certain countries will take some different approaches, being able to shape that is really important. Jerry, just a question for you. You talked a bit about your work, especially in the water sector with utilities across the country, but IoT has so many interesting use cases, and as cities across the continent become smarter, more data-driven, as sensor costs decline, as IoT networks improve, what are some of the exciting future opportunities you're looking at from an IoT business perspective at Safaricom?
Okay, so we continue to provide the base, which is the infrastructure.
Right.
So with IoT, as he said, most of these devices are battery powered. Your traditional 3G, 4G consume a lot of power, especially when we are doing data transfers. So we are continuing to invest in infrastructure to ensure that we provide a base of where these devices can be layered. So we've put in a lot of investment in our narrowband IoT network, which is specifically now built for IoT devices. It is a low power network, so it conserves battery and it gives them a longer life cycle. We're also looking at other technologies such as LoRa that give alternatives to different use cases as they come. And then of course, as we continue to evolve and grow, we're looking at other use cases over and above utility. Transport is really huge. Right. E-mobility becomes very big. Africa is predominantly an agricultural continent, so looking at work around agriculture and health. Of course, you look at whichever use case you want to get into from a commercial perspective is how can you scale these use cases and deliver the outcomes that the different sectors desire.
Thank you. And Beatrice, one question for you in terms of, like, obviously MTN works with a lot of exciting startups already. How do you keep on innovating as a business to make sure that it's attractive for startups to work with you, and what kind of value proposition do you make to the startup ecosystem specifically, and what kind of opportunities do you see there?
Thank you. So we believe at MTN that everybody deserves benefit of a modern connected life. And we know that we cannot reach everywhere, but the startups, can reach there, and we cannot innovate everything, but the startups do. So what we do is, one, provide them with a platform. Right now, we are focusing on building the most valuable platform in Africa. And to enable our startups, one, we've given them Momo APIs, that is where they can seamlessly come through the MTN Momo developer to integrate with our platforms and, come and try out their solutions through the MTN Open API Sandbox. And then afterwards integrate with us fully. But also we have collaborated with other, organizations to teach the startups, because most of the challenge that they have is on regulation. As a regulated platform or business, you can only integrate with us when you have certain, licenses, etc. And some of the startups either don't know or find it really hard. So through organizations like FITSPA that, we pay membership to and everything, we try to push our, innovators who want to integrate with us to go through those different organizations to understand what is the, regulatory landscape like, and what licenses do I need over and above the solution that you have before you come and integrate with us. Then the other thing, MTN funds, I think all through our footprint in most of the country, we have I think it ended last month, what we call the Momo Hackathon. And this is a platform that we give to startups to come and, display before MTN their various innovative solutions that they have come up with. And obviously the winning, startup or proposition goes away with, approximately between a range of $5,000 to $10,000. But we are doing all this to try and encourage these people. Obviously, we have teams on the ground, commercial teams, products team that are always ready to engage with the startup community and to answer all their questions. So yeah, we are very open, and if there are any startups in the room, we would be happy to see you come and interact with that and integrate with the mobile money platform. Thank you.
Thank you. One question for you. Please keep the answer brief. I do want to hear from the audience as well, but you have two mobile operators with you on the panel. Is there anything you wish they were offering to you that currently is a bit of a challenge? Like, what kind of product innovations do you see relevant as a startup partnering with these operators?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be direct and very brief. MTN would love to see a digital portal where we can see how much our SIMs are using and activate them or deactivate them. Safaricom, thank you. You already have that. It's very helpful for us to see that. I'll just keep it at that.
Okay, very practical, but that's good to know. If we as a GSMA obviously understand that startup MNO engagement has a lot of potential, and I think helping startups understand how MNOs think about their business and their approach to things, and vice versa, is really critical for us across the Mobile for Development program. So we're hoping that we can continue to work together to make sure that we maximize the joint impact that we can have as startups and mobile operators. But now I want to turn to the audience and see if you guys have any questions for our panelists. Please, you can briefly introduce yourself when you ask a question, and please keep the question brief if possible. We have some people going through with mics. Hopefully they'll be on this time so we can hear you. But let me know if you have questions. I think we have one up front here, and one there. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity to share. My name is Noel Eliel from African Leadership University. So I wanted to know, my question go to Jerry Taker from the business of IoT. So I wanted to know if there's a platform for sharing different ideas in the IoT business, and how can you manage to support ideas that are developing and for becoming an entrepreneurial opportunity for success in those sectors of IoT businesses. Thank you.
So, opportunities in the IoT business. We'll take one more question before we answer. I think there was one up here. Yeah.
Hello, good evening. My name is Simon from Uganda. My question will go to Beatrice from MTN. Okay, it is a general question. As MTN group across Africa, you are in many African nations. I will give an example: South Africa, Tanzania. Why is it so hard to transact under the same MTN group in mobile money, yet you are the same group at the end of the day? If you go to South Africa and you have MTN Uganda, the best thing they will tell you is if you can put it to either a Stanbic Bank, then buy a SIM card of MTN and transfer it to South African line. It is then for Tanzania, you can transact from MTN Uganda to Tanzania, but the charges are too high. So as one group of MTN, how can you come and, one, reduce the fees where there is ease of doing business with the mobile money, but also integrate all the other nations where MTN is existent?
Thank you for both questions. Mobile operators in the hot seat for these ones. Jerry, maybe you can go first on your question, and briefly Beatrice, although it's not completely a regulatory panel, but we'll go next.
Okay, thank you for that question. So first, it's important to note that strategically, our go-to-market approach is through partners. And partners here, I mean innovators. So you'll see most of our use cases that we've taken to market, it's Safaricom plus a partner or an ecosystem of partners. So yes, we do a lot of work with innovators across the country. And after this, I can share with you contacts that you can reach out to, either to me directly or to a team that will be willing to listen to your innovation. But most important is our go-to-market strategy today is predominantly through partners and through different innovators.
Okay, thank you for your question. So right now we send money. What he's asking about is actually remittances. We send money to the rest of Africa. Today, if you dial *165# with your MTN line, select send money, select rest of Africa, you should be able to find the different corridors, especially for the companies, for the other MTN telcos majorly. But then for where we are sending money to telcos within Africa that are not, let's say, MTN companies, we have to go through, third parties. And then, the arrangements and what we've been talking about with different partnerships, the dynamics of those arrangements around, foreign exchange and everything come into play. So we are remitting money to the rest of Africa. Right now, we are remitting money to Asia. We are remitting money to the Middle East, and we are remitting money to the US and Europe. Maybe I'll just interact and show him the customer journeys. But thanks a lot for your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Beatrice. Just checking if there's one or two last final questions, and then we have to close. Lemma, I think here and there. Yeah.
Yes, hi guys. I'm Castro Nyabola from Persistent. So my question goes to, I'd say partly Ampersand and also Safaricom. So for Ampersand, it's basically like, what challenges are you guys facing with regards to service providers for your SIM cards for communication? Do you use the same providers across the different countries, or are you using different providers, like unique providers per country? And also, what challenges are you experiencing in terms of area coverage? Maybe you can share that. And also for Safaricom, maybe what are you guys doing to counter issues with coverage, maybe in villages in Kenya, where there is very little to no coverage? Thank you.
Yeah. One question. Wait. And one more right here. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Isaac. I'm from Carnegie Mellon. My question is to Alp. So I see that majorly you have the motorcycles just around where there are stations for swapping. How wide is this coverage, and then what's the plan in extending it? And also the second question is just operation for you as a startup. So what are the challenges that you find that are unique to you as a startup here in Africa?
All right, thanks. Thanks for both of those questions. Firstly, from a IoT perspective, we tried different approaches. At some point, we were using global SIM providers across both to ease of operating, so you get to use one single SIM card. That's both going to work in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, wherever you go. Obviously, the costs are significantly higher when you use a global SIM, but you have the benefit of a portal where you can turn on and off SIMs, and you get to jump across different networks. So if you can be on Safaricom, Airtel, MTN, they'll roam. Essentially, they're roaming SIMs. But of course, that comes at a cost. And what we found is that in the urban areas, since our mobility products are generally used in the dense urban areas, mainly Kigali and Nairobi, where the coverage is actually quite good, we don't quite benefit from that. And like I said, in Kenya, Safaricom has a very useful portal where you can actually deactivate SIMs. In MTN, that's not the case. We still get like PDFs from MTN for over 2,000 SIM cards every single month, and you have to go through each one of those PDFs to understand how much data they've used, which is, sorry to say, a bit archaic and old school. But that's a challenge for us, actually, in dealing, because if you have a SIM card out there, that's actually on a plan, it's really important that connectivity is a really important aspect of our operation for us to collect that data and to understand what's happening. It's required for the swaps to happen. So it is a really important aspect of the operating procedure for the business. So that's right now we use just direct Safaricom. We work with direct partners in Safaricom and MTN in Rwanda, getting SIMs directly from them. And we integrate also, thanks very much to the MTN Open API for the Momo, and then Safaricom's API for that as well. So we integrate directly with both mobile money services in both countries, and that's the smoothest way to do it. We've used aggregators there in the past, and they're sadly also very challenging, even though they provide some early day benefits. Secondly, challenges for
I think it was the charging network, and then
Yes,
also
okay.
just generally as a startup.
Yeah, so we have a pretty good coverage across Rwanda, Kigali right now. We just opened a station in Rienzi yet today, so giving access to kind of the edges of the city. We're opening another station in Kanombe. And so the citywide coverage is there. Sometimes we're opening larger stations in main arteries where we can do higher volume swapping. So those are kind of primary main roads like the Palu and some other roads you'll see. So we have kind of a high volume and more distributed, but still some quite centralized swapping stations where we do a lot of swaps a day. Some outperform 10x the other stations. So some are just for network coverage, so you don't have range anxiety, and other ones are really for that quick, fast swap. And challenges, I mean, we've built this business largely from the ground up here in Rwanda. I don't think anyone has attempted to do something like that. In the past, we put the first vehicle on the road back in 2016. That was a prototype. We built that here. I mean, we didn't choose to do things the easy way. Obviously, you have limited industry and also high-tech equipment available for making such prototypes here. So the skilled gap has been very challenging to fill. Hiring for really roles has been challenging to fill. So the skills gap has been a major, let's say, challenge for us with respect to getting, you can get a lot of like grads coming out of school, but you also need a lot of experience, people that have done it before in your team, because you're not doing something easy. If it was easy, it would have been done already, right? So combining that with growth as well, so you need to go at a specific pace. You don't have to forever to do this. You have to do it at a specific pace. So combining all those three together has been a significant challenge, and we've had to do some, things to overcome those. I think we're making good strides right now. We still do. Our headquarters are still here, so we have around a 30-person engineering team and growing here in Rwanda. But that has been the primary challenge, I'd say.
Thanks a lot. Jerry, real quick question, I think for you was on coverage. We're a bit over time already, so if it could be brief, that'd be great. Thank you.
So from a coverage perspective, our IoT SIMs, we've enabled local roaming. What that does, we are pretty much well covered, but we also realize there are gaps here and there. Mm-hmm. So we have enabled local roaming. Right. So where we have those gaps, then our Airtel covers for us from a roaming perspective. But as we continue building these use cases, then we also continue to strengthen the network from a coverage perspective.
So collaboration also with the other operator in terms of coverage gaps, very interesting. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this session. It was really great to hear, the wide-ranging perspectives, both on the sort of IoT front, where Safaricom is doing some pioneering work in Kenya, and I'm really excited to look forward how your business is going to keep on growing. MTN, really exciting to hear about some of your initiatives working with a range of different partners on digital payments, but also more value-added partnerships. And looking forward to continue engaging with you on different integration opportunities down the line. And yeah, I'll also thank you for telling us a lot about the exciting journey of Ampersand. And I think the e-mobility space is one. If you asked me 5 years ago, where it would be, today. I would have never imagined the amount of exciting initiatives and some of the growth we've seen in this space. A lot more to go, obviously, which is exciting, but we've already seen some of the potential. So really looking forward to maybe inviting you guys back in 5 years and seeing where we stand. But thanks a lot. It was great to hear what role private sector, both innovators and established companies can play in making smart cities vision a reality. And thanks for the audience for your engagement today as well. If you have any questions to our panel after, feel free to stay. And if you want to learn more about the GSMA's work in this area, please reach out to our Digital Utilities program. And if you want to learn or collaborate with us on the co-designing urban futures initiatives with UN Habitat and Connected Places Catapult, make sure you get the flyer, and the relevant contact information is on there as well. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you.